The next selection is Maine's Black Future, conceptualized and created by Genius Black for the Maine Monitor.
Black Future.
My name is Genius Black.
My name is Sean Alonzo Harris.
More from Genius and Sean in a moment, but now, a story from Maine's unique Black history. Randolph Stakeman joined the faculty of Bowdoin College, located in Brunswick, Maine, in the year 1978. Often called Randy, Mr. Stakeman began his days as a professor and teacher at this small, historic liberal arts college. Randy was hired as an associate professor to teach African history inside Bowdoin's decade-old African American Studies program. The college was expanding its history programs to focus more broadly than Europe, now including Asia, Latin America, and Africa. When the head of Bowdoin's African American Studies program was leaving, Randy helped search for a replacement. And in 1989, Randy Stakeman himself became director of African American Studies at Bowdoin College. The first thing he did as director is recommend a name change for the program to Africana Studies, AFRICANA Studies, reflecting the global African diaspora. During his tenure as director, he also spent time as an associate dean directly supporting Bowdoin College students. As many of you know, myself, Genius, attended Bowdoin College, and that's where I first met, at the time, Professor Randolph Stakeman. This was a time when being a rare Black man on campus was my reality. It meant the world to me to have the support of a few brilliant Black men on the faculty. I will always remember the impact of taking Randy's course titled African History to 1850, i.e., diving deep into many aspects of the African continent from the cradle of human civilization up to the year 1850. I learned about Mali and Mansa Musa I, about the wealth and the influence of ancient Songhai. We learned about the role of the Dutch in establishing enslavement as a business practice between Europe and Africa, but only after Arab leaders established a flow of enslaved Africans from East Africa. I also worked on writing about African history for the first time in my life. For myself and for other students, Randy was an intellectual and cultural anchor. Later, he became my academic advisor, and eventually he became a family friend. So let's look back at Randy's journey to Bowdoin College and how it uniquely equipped him to be the director of Africana Studies. Randy Stakeman was born in the year 1949 to a lower-class Black family residing in Brooklyn, New York. He moved to Queens around 1954 and attended school there up until he applied and was accepted into Phillips Exeter Academy for his last 2 years of high school. Although he had grown up around some middle-class Black folks in New York, he found himself a stranger in a strange place. Randy explained to me that the majority white university prep academy, quote, wasn't a cruel place, but it was a hard place, end quote. Although it wasn't warm and fuzzy, he leaned into the academic rigor, overlooking much of the racialized ignorance that he encountered there. Then Randy attended Wesleyan University. There, he met other brilliant Black students. They shared perspectives and also shared moments of activism. After the killing of Malcolm X, Randy and other Black Wesleyan students took over a campus building in celebration of Malcolm X's birthday. They did so by blasting Malcolm's recorded speeches all day long from this building. And after dispersing from this building, they also demanded the formation of the African American Studies program at Wesleyan. As you can see from his college days, Randy was courageous and set on making space for Black people, amongst other aspirations. Later, as faculty at Bowdoin, Randy relied on his familiarity navigating private schools. This was to the benefit of his students. And as a dean, he stood up for students, including Black students, who were sometimes overly scrutinized and or discredited by some of his peers. Aside from supporting students, Randy Stakeman conducted rigorous and groundbreaking research on the history of Black life in the state of Maine. He painstakingly gathered Black census data by hand in Augusta, Maine. His compiled census data, academic papers, and speeches make Randy one of the foremost Maine Black history scholars to date. He wrote about enslavement, genealogy, and even the civil rights movement inside Maine. I can say that the intellectual groundwork and the space-making of someone like Randy Stakeman are many of the reasons that a person like me, Genius, is here inside the state of Maine and has taken on the work of sharing much of the unknown Black history of the state of Maine. And y'all remember, when Randy became director of Africana Studies for Bowdoin College, that was supposed to be a 3-year assignment. Fortunately, it turned out that he spent 17 years as the director of Africana Studies and a total of 28 as faculty at Bowdoin until he retired in the year 2006. Shout out a brilliant Black man who has inspired me for years and who I hope inspires you as you look more into his work, research, life, and legacy at Bowdoin College and beyond. Connecting the state of Maine's rich Black history to Black changemakers weaving Maine's Black future today. Today, I'm sitting down with Sean Alonzo Harris, an intellectual force and multi-talented professional photographer. Sean's photo styles span from artistic to editorial to commercial, and his skills have carried him around the globe many times over. He received a James Vanderzee Award for his photo work and an illustrious Lens Culture Critics' Choice Award. He has also received awards or grants from Communication Arts and the Maine Arts Commission. Sean began studying photography as a child and studied at the Art Institute of Boston. He studied abroad in Italy and at Maine Media Workshops. His select client list includes Boston Magazine, Down East Magazine, Ralph Lauren Magazine, and the Maine College of Art. Don't forget, he's also a father and a husband. I'm excited to introduce y'all to Sean. Sean, where are you from?
Originally from Cambridge, Massachusetts, a little piece down the road.
Got it. What was it like growing up there?
Cambridge is an interesting spot because it was at that particular time, it was like very diverse. I mean, I wouldn't say diverse, but we had a strong Black population who was like middle class, who we could flow and roam through the streets without being, without, I had friends who were lawyers. I had parents who were lawyers and doctors and business owners and all of that stuff who lived in this very predominantly Black neighborhood. And so we just flowed. And then when we went to grammar school, it was like, granted, in grammar school, we felt equal. And then in high school, the great equalizer, basketball, baseball, sports, art, and all that stuff. So you kind of, if you fall into those categories, and you excelled in those categories, then, it kind of masked a lot of things, because when you think about challenges and racism or whatever, you know what I mean? If you're like, yay, you did awesome in that whatever, you don't, you kind of glosses over the racism.
Yep.
So you don't feel it, the blows of that are not the same as if you didn't have that. You probably don't feel as many of the micro things that it goes on with racism until you get a little bit older. Yep. Where I grew up and the way I grew up was very diverse, where I could flow in multiple worlds.
When did you first pick up a camera and start getting into photography at all?
I was in D.C. and around Christmas time, I might have been in Cambridge. I don't know where I was, but anyways, I asked my grandmother for a tape recorder, and it was at the time it was funky. You could tape music off the radio, you could make funny skits, and just like seemed like a fun thing. So, and my grandmother would usually get me kind of close to what I wanted. You know what I mean? So it wasn't like a crazy far-fetched thing. Well, I didn't think it was anyway.
Okay,
but. So Christmas came around. I was so excited, and I stayed over my grandmother's house on Christmas morning. I always did. And then went down, had to wait for everyone to get up and stuff. I'm all excited. I see my little present under the table, under the tree, and I'm like, yeah, this is it. This is it. And so I opened it up, and I was just like, what? Grandma, this isn't a tape recorder, spoiled kid, and she's like, son, you can record with that too. So I just kept stepping. Like, of course. Okay. So I started taking photographs of my family and everything. And, like my granddad, my grandma, my cousins, some uncles, you know what I mean? Up and down the street, Mama Lou, who took care of me sometime, who made the bomb cake, blah, 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 blah. And then I would come back and I would develop them at this place called Ferranti Deghi. That was this camera store. It's no longer there. And I would take the pictures back and put them up on my wall, and not realizing, now that I think about it now, it's just like I was creating pagination on my wall, throwing these things. This is cousin Kim, Tony, Gansey, blah, blah, blah. This is like, this is dad. This is Aunt Jean. This is, and putting them in these order, in order of like either time, how they're related, whatever, and just kind of, and I would do it every year, every summer until I was probably 12. So this started when I was 7. So I would do it till I was 12. And then by the time I got to 12, I was like, hey, all right. So then things changed where I got, I began to get serious and got a more serious camera and stuff like, So that was the beginning development. And, but in there, I took some weekend classes here and there, and did, I got some formal young teachings, workshops and stuff. And granted, in Cambridge, Polaroid was existed in Cambridge. So there was a lot of young programs for kids with photography because of Polaroid.
You asked your grandmother for a tape recorder, and I could go on about all the reasons that I wanted tape recorders when I was young as well, and all the cool things we could do. We're in the studio right now. Part of what we're doing right now comes from my initial love of tapes and cassettes. You know what I mean?
Right.
But instead of recording audio and sound and capturing things in that manner, you received a camera and started taking photographs.
Right.
What was satisfying about that?
I think it was like the idea that I could travel with my family, or the idea that I could bring them with me, or the, because it was, I'd put them up on the wall and play with them and do different things with them. And then eventually they'd go into a box, but I would always go back and look through them and just memories and stuff like that. And it just made sense to me to like, it was like, and after a while, like it was like, after a while, like you start picking up cues and noticing things that recur over and over again. And so I guess I can chalk that up to me starting to like acknowledge or understand like a language that I was creating that I didn't, at the time, I didn't have the verbiage to understand it, but I was like, oh, I like when I do that. So I started to do the same things over again, so I started to create. So I was working on a style, like, you know what I mean?
Gotcha.
But even before I knew what a style in photography was, but it was like, oh, I like that, and I would dig into it, and just kind of, it just came, I don't know, it just came to me very naturally. And for some reason I see patterns and textures and all those things in a very quick, I can pick those things out very quickly. When I'm looking at a scene, I can see how things like, like interject, like, the positive, the negative, all like how all those things are going to flow together rather quickly. So it's just like, I can see a scene and then I can either adapt or move, or what I call falling into the image, you know what I mean? To make it so that, like, in my language, it fits in my language rather quickly, so.
And I love that you talked about being able to travel with your family, stay connected with folks. You travel a lot still.
Yeah.
So photography still keeps you connected out into the world, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, like now it's mostly for work. It's like it's great because I get to travel and meet people and do these projects, and yeah, it's I can tell you when I'm on set or when I'm in front of the camera or whatever, I know that it's where where I'm supposed to be, because for some reason it's like a musician being on stage. They'd be like, "Hey, how's it going?" They get on stage and then all of a sudden they're just like floating on air. I get that same thing when I'm with my camera and my crew, and we got models and I got producers and all this stuff in front of me. It's just like I flow. My jokes are funnier. Just stuff just goes. Everything just clicks. All gears are firing. So I know this is what I'm supposed to do. Like, it's not a doubt that this isn't what I'm supposed to do.
Absolutely.
And I remember so the first time that my wife saw me on the set, she's like, "Whoa, you become a whole nother person." Like, you know what I mean? Like my energy and my jokes and how I interact with people and how, it's just like a whole nother thing, so.
That makes so much sense. And although I'm still growing as a photographer, it makes me think, like, when I make beats, sometimes I just get into this deep zone. Like, I'm like sweating, there's beads of sweat on my forehead, and I'm just not somewhere else. I mean, I'm right here, but I'm deep in the music.
Right.
And so it kind of reminds me of that. There is this kind of flow state that we learn how to create around us as creators, you know what I mean? And it's inspiring to hear you talk about it.
Music is, for me, I listen to music for texture. I listen to music for space. I listen to music for inspiration and all that stuff. And a lot of the music that I listen to is like jazz, or it's just like Arnett Coleman or Eric Dolphy or Charles Mingus, and these things with these really heavy emotional and very layered music. You know what I mean? And so I'm just saying, like, when you were talking about that is inspiration to me when I take photographs. So I'm just saying, like, it's like because to me, I like music and stuff. That's like, I think of it as the perfect art form. Like, it's created and then it's like in the air, and it's like, whoa, it's just like you do it again and it's totally different the next time. Yeah. And it's just like, it's like the perfect essence of, it's like, when you squeeze an orange and you see the effervescence come, and then you cut it and you smell it. It's just like, you know what I mean? It's just like
a whole experience. Yeah.
It's just like, it's like really, really, it's just like a really, really beautiful. That
kind of immersive piece. No, I get why that is what rang up out of you hearing me talk about what I was saying with the music. Right. Getting in that zone, right. You can kind of get lost in it, or at least it like toots up your antennas to be able to do the thing.
I moved from Brooklyn because when I went in art school, I went from Boston to Brooklyn, and then Brooklyn to Maine, and I met my wife, and so Maine was a good place to kind of settle down, and I was in love, so I just felt that that I'm good, I can make this work, and that's what I did. Moving from New York City or Brooklyn to Maine was tough. I remember the first night I was here, and I'm like, it's 10 o'clock, and I wanted to go out to eat. This is before Maine was a food. This is before Portland had foodie, all that stuff. And I was just like, it's 10 o'clock. Where can we go to eat? And it was like, McDonald's. I'm like, McDonald's, that's it? Like, no, you can't get no pizza, nothing? Like, oh, man, it was tough the first 10 years or so.
Yeah.
It wasn't like it is now. That's for sure.
Okay, so real quick, throw out, what's your favorite spot to eat in Maine?
I like to cook a lot. So the things so the things that I like to eat are things that I can't regularly make. Like, so I like sushi. So one of the spots that I enjoy going to is Yusaku, which is nice. And I got hip to them because my daughter had the swine flu, and I was getting their miso soup. They cooked up like this big jug of miso soup, and I would get it I'd get it every other day because that was the only thing my daughter could eat, and I felt like it nursed her back to health. But they also had these luncheon specials where you get 2 rolls, a salad, and like and miso soup. And when I first started getting it, it was like $8 or something like that. It was cheaper than a turkey sandwich. And it just made sense to me. I was like, why? This is it right here. This is good. Get a spicy tuna roll and like salmon and avocado, and you get miso soup. It felt like you were living.
Yeah.
You know?
Sounds good to me, bro. It sounds good to me.
Or you could have got a turkey sandwich without bacon.
Oof. Now you're also making me realize that I'm hungry.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
Well, after this I can eat. It's all good.
Yeah. Nourish the soul.
Thank you for sharing. And another thing is too, I've been noticing more black folks, more people in general. There's people from out of state that check out this podcast, and then when people visit, give them a little tidbit. People want to know where to eat.
Right. Mm-hmm.
The next thing I want to talk about, all of our self-worth and what we're capable of is inherent, it's inside of us, and I think it's beautiful. But I do want to take a moment outside of your actual self-worth and just reflect and have you share with us and my audience some of the ways that you have been honored over the years. How have you been honored?
There are three awards that stick out. I've gotten a few others, but there are three awards that stick out to me. The first one was the James Vanderzee Award, which I won while I was in high school. I was a junior in high school. I won first place in honorable mention, and it was the first day I got paid for my photography, or I won something. I think I got some shell-toed Adidas, you know what I mean? I was like, but
that's hard.
I was like, oh, these are tight. My black and white shell toes are gonna be banging.
I love it. I'm not gonna lie.
But so that was really good, and that was pivotal because it was the first time that I was it was the first time that I actually saw another black professional photographer, because we watched this movie about James Vanderzee, and it was titled The Picture Taking Man. And James Vanderzee grew up in Massachusetts, but moved to Harlem, and then, and he opened up this portrait photo session. And so when he was doing that, he'd paint his own backdrops, and he'd do all the, it just seemed like so amazing and creative that I was just like, wow, that's something that I could see myself doing. Before that, I thought I was going to be a baseball player, but and then I realized that wasn't going to happen. So photography was good.
but you're nice at baseball?
Oh, I'm high school nice.
Yeah, okay. That's fair. Yeah. Okay, so the James Vanderzee stood out to you.
The James Vanderzee Award, and he's like one of the most prominent black photographers. I mean, he's obviously passed, but he's one of the most prominent black photographers. I mean, in black history, he's older than Gordon Parks, but I'd say Gordon Parks, James Vanderzee, and then we go into some other, people. Then you go into Roy DeCrava, or you know what I mean. But those, Though I would say that James Vanderzee and Gordon Parks, if you said, hey, do you know any black photographers, those two would primarily come up. So when I was in college, I was interning for a photographer, and he would enter this photo contest, and actually in the year he and communication arts, and And this year that I was looking at, he had the cover, which is this beautiful portrait. And he took this portrait, and the person that the portrait was a kid that I went to high school with. And at the time, John Hewitt, his name was John Hewitt, and he was doing all this street basketball stuff and just gorgeous, rich black and whites. I mean, and we'd put up these huge white backdrops. I mean, like 30 feet by 20 feet. They're huge.
Oh, whoa. Okay.
Big. And we would put them over in the back. We'd put them to separate the outdoor basketball hoops. And we'd get a 3-on-3, 2-on-2, 1-on-1. And basically it was all to create these Nike ads. And they were just beautiful, high key contrast and sweat, and just they were just gorgeous. Wow. And I'm like, wow. And coming from school and you're learning the zone system, and You know what I mean? And stuff that you really can't apply, like, as, you know, you can't apply it quickly. You have to, that kind of, like, you know, in theory, it works like this, you know, if that makes sense to, you know what I mean? In theory, it works like this, but you can't apply it like, okay, this is happening right here. Okay, grab your camera. Okay, what f-stop, what shutter speed, what blah, 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 you know, what film, what, you know, that kind of thing. In theory, you can't do it like that. So he had this beautiful spread with these basketball images, and I'm like, oh my God, these are so gorgeous, so beautiful. And I was just like, I'm going to be in that, I'm going to win that contest someday. And, you know, I'd enter it, you know, like, you know, I'd enter it every year. I mean, since I interned and I a photo assistant, but I wouldn't, not every year, but, you know, I'd miss some years and I'd enter, you know what I mean? I missed some years. And, and literally in 2001, I had a whole spread in there, like, you know, like 5 images, because you can enter a series or one image. And I had a series that was accepted into the book. Yeah. So that was rather special, because it was something that I was working towards for years. Yes. I mean, like 30 years, and it happened, and it was very, very rewarding. So that's really special to me. That award's really special to me, and
love it.
There's and the last one is this, and that's more on the commercial end of things, you know. Okay. So that was accolades with my commercial peers, and then on the fine art end of things, which happened in the same year, there's this other thing called lens culture, and it's for, like, you know, the top fine art photographers in the world. This is all of, like, you know, communication arts is in the world, and lens culture is in the world. Everyone's from everywhere. And so they have different categories. They have street photography, black and white photography, portrait, you know, just a bunch of different stuff. And then they have this one thing, curatorial picks, and that is the pinnacle, because they only pick like 32 photographers. Like the other ones, they'll pick out like 100, you know what I mean, because it's got to fill a whole thing. But this is only like 32 photographers that are picked, you know. And then, you know, I didn't win the big prize, but I was selected in there, so it was like huge that I was the curatorial, like that was like, you know. But, you know, you could put anything you wanted in the curatorial, you know what I mean. It wasn't theme driven. So it was just based off the merit of your work. And then they talked about your work, like, why is this? You know, so it was like really, really awesome.
So those are the 3 things that resonate the loudest for you, like that you recall and you feel proud because of what you achieved.
I think when you're an artist, there's always like this sense, is it good enough? Is it, you know what I mean? No, it's different from the imposter syndrome, I think, you know what I mean? Imposter syndrome, where you think like, I'm not good enough. I'm not, like, you know what I mean? It's something, it's different, where you're in your head, you know, like, I think and I think this is purposeful in a way, where you have to feel like you're just not satisfied, or it's not, or that could be better, or, you know what I mean? Or that, So when you're creating and you're doing things, or when you're like creating, developing your work and doing, and trying to build like either a body of work, a series of work, or just working on, like, you know, curiosity work, you know, there's always this element of like, it's not, I don't know, you know what I mean? And you're like, I'm going to put this out there in the world and see what, you know, this could be like really good or really bad. We'll see what happens, you know?
Facts.
But you just don't know until you get the feedback from others, you know? You just, I mean, because, you know, it's one thing to live in your head, but when you live in the world, it's different.
I like how you said that.
Yeah.
And I've even noticed in my own head sometimes feeling anxious or feeling sad, and then later you realize that it was all in your head. So the in the head world is different from the real world. And we have to admit that to ourselves sometimes.
Very true. I mean, you know, and the creative process is a tricky beast. You know what I mean? It's just like one of those things where I think there's this famous photographer, Irving Penn. He said, working on photography is working on yourself. You know what I mean? And when he first said it, it was just like, it just went over my head. And then you think about it. First of all, you're working with patience. You're working with, you have to work with adversity. You have to work on all of these elements because there's so many things that you can't. I mean, even some of the terminology that you use in the darkroom, developer, stop bath, fixer, and permawash, and all these things can relate to your life in some kind of way. Like, you know what I mean? So it's just like, that going through the process of working those things out. The maturity of creativity is realizing that, in the plateaus is where the work actually happens. It's not on the upward spiral, you know what I mean? It's not on the upward momentum. That's the easiest part of the process because of all the work that happened in the valley, in the plateaus, because that's where you're like, nothing's going right. You're figuring it out. You're working it through. You're banging your head. You're going. And then finally something starts to click. And then maybe you take one step and then another click. And then it's click, 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 click. And then you're up on upward mobility. And that's the easy part. That's when everything's like, yeah, big, yeah, I got this, bow, bow, bow. And the other one's just like, no, this is not working. What am I going to do? But that's the hard work. That's the money making, you know what I mean? Right there. Cause it's like, you got to be in the valley to create. It's like a laboratory of nothing but creativity. But in maturity, you realize that that's the place that you need to be sometimes. In maturity, you can't stand it. So then what happens is that you will create things, like that's where like eye candy comes from. That's where like just like half, like you've done something that's successful, like before, like, and you just keep on creating that same thing over and over and over again. But you got to be willing to go into the belly of the beast of creativity.
Oh, okay. Facts. I like that. And I mean, I would even say for aspiring or growing photographers, creators, artists, just go back and listen to those last 2 or 3 minutes again, for real. Just rewind that. That really is, I think, coming from wisdom that Sean is sharing from. So just want to throw that out there. The next thing that I want to know, Sean, and my audience wants to know, right now, what are you working on or what are you excited to be working on coming right up?
Okay, so over the years, I've created like different bodies of work. Most of them are like, I guess you could call them like, either about gentrification or police brutality or like, like love my black skin, or they're very, very focused on the black experience.
Right.
So I mean, rightfully so. Don't like I mean, like it's part of what gets me up in the morning, keeps me going. Like I think about these things, but over the past 3 years, I'm like I was just like, hey, wait a minute, like Henry, like, like there was like there's a famous painter, Henry Tanner, who he painted landscapes, and he painted like these beautiful paintings, and he was ridiculed by his peers. Is like, hey, don't you know what's going on? How can you just paint like these beautiful landscapes? You know what I mean? You got to paint about the experience. Like you got to paint about what's going on out in the streets. You know what I mean? You got to paint about the struggle. And he's like, why can't I be a painter? You know what I mean? And to me, that was like one of the most revolutionary things, because, like, when you look at, like, let's say, for instance, you look at Denzel Washington or any famous person, they instantly have to be some type of role model. They have to take on this otherworldly experience, and then you look at someone like, let's say, a Robert De Niro. He can just roam the streets and do whatever he wants. He's not asked to be a role model. He can choose to be, but he's not asked to be. Like, you know what I mean? And just thinking about that. So I started to think about, like, what does that mean? Or how does that, like, interpret, as a black male, like what is my role? You know what I mean? And I, like as a black male creative artist? What is my role in all of this?
Okay.
And so you start to play it around. You start to think about all the stuff that you've done in the past, and you hope that it resonates with people, blah, blah, blah. And then I realized that I needed to relax and step back, and maybe one of the most profound things I can do is switch it all up and take photographs of meditative things meditative scenery. Take away the people, you know what I mean? Flip everything that I've done upside down, deconstruct everything, and do the exact opposite thing that I've been doing for a long time, and flip it on its head, and then figure it out and present it as meditation or as experience or as something different, so that I can so personally I can grow and I can see other people grow, but also with another twist in there where I can also have them put a time limit on it, so that this image takes 6 minutes and 42 seconds to watch, because I believe the other thing is I just said meditation. I also believe the other thing is, when it comes to visual or imagery that sits on the wall or through a book or on a screen or whatever, I think the attention span or whatever, we can't even, no matter what I do, I'm not going to reach or touch anyone the way that I want to, because the attention span's too short.
So as you move forward with what you're working on, what will the output look like? Or more so, what will the impact be on viewers?
That I can't answer what the impact would be, because that's impossible.
Okay.
I'd be lying if I did. I would like to create big, beautiful color images that touch on back what we were talking about, music, where I'm talking about, we'll boil it down to the bare essence, texture, depth, space, all of just try to work in that realm, and really ask questions and challenge what that is. So I mean, and if I ask the question that someone say, okay, I want you to look at this 6 minutes or whatever, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever.
Yep.
I believe that I would have to appropriately make that piece that size where they could scan over it and have that space. And I'm asking you to go into some place, almost detach or disattach yourself from something, and then let me grab your hand with whatever, and let me just walk you through this for this amount of time, and then boom, okay, there you go. And what'd you think? You know what I mean? And,
yeah.
and then I can ask, let's revert back to a time when we studied, or let's revert back to a time when we that we can critically think on something. Let's revert back to a time when we take something in, we sit with it, and we go back to it again, and then we make a decision, versus instant. You know what I mean? Versus wow, okay, that's cool. I'll double tap that, ding ding.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you've looked at it literally for 2 seconds and not understand the nuances of what the actual impact on the actual, all the nuances. Because when you look at images, depending on what photographer, they have set it up in such a way, they're shooting it 9 times out of 10. They're shooting it in a way where they're setting you up to work through that image, whatever, foreground, background, shadow,
yes,
detail, and all of these things. And if you put them together in a series, it might draw you through in a way where that you're not aware of it, but it's happening.
Yes.
And so, but if you slow down, you can pick up on those. Oh, this dude right here is playing with us because he's putting faces in the ties. But if you just look at it, you just see a tie that's crinkled.
Right.
And then, you know what I mean? But it's so subtle, you know what I mean? Oh, they're doing all these, there's all of these things that they're putting in here, but people don't take the time to slow down and see. Mm-hmm. But the other thing is, it's also critical thinking. You know what I mean? It's just it's how do I look at this image? And how do I think about it? How do I take it apart and put it back together? You know what I mean? And what's right and what's wrong? How's it talking to me? Asking those questions like, why does this make me feel uncomfortable? Why does this make me feel comfortable? Why does this make me feel at ease? But those are questions instead of like, oh, I like the color. Boom.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, that's cool. Boom. So.
Beyond the aesthetics, there's a whole kind of digestion that can happen. I guess based off of an aesthetic thing that you're looking at. I was recently just talking to some people at the Maine Humanities Council, and we were talking about the humanities in general, and that's kind of what you're talking about. It's like taking in art, poetry, literature, reading history, and then chewing on it. Mm-hmm. And then thinking, so how did it make me feel? How does it make me feel? Mm-hmm. Right? And moving forward, if this continues to happen, how will it make us all feel? Any of those things, right? Mm-hmm. And I like that you're thinking through those filters. And like I said, creating art in a way that elicits that much, at least I trust that you will create art at a level that elicits that much engagement. If your art's mediocre, you shouldn't be asking people to stare at it for 6 minutes. Right. I don't have that concern with you, Sean.
Right.
So the last question I have, Sean, what do you think, sense, and feel for Maine's Black future?
Because one of the things that I find myself as I get older, I work in a lot more in isolation. Like I work, I go to my studio, I work, I go out to work jobs, and as you like, one of the problems is when you get older, you tend to kind of like, when I was like hanging out when I was younger, it's more bounce, more fun, blah, blah, blah. Like older, I'm like, you know what? It's 8:30. I want to go home.
Let's bounce. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I want to do this right now. But that being said, so for instance, my sister came up to visit. She's like, wow, this is beautiful. I love this. Portland is awesome. Oh, the beaches is so beautiful. So much good food to eat. Boom, 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 boom. Mm-hmm. And we're like, oh, yeah. But then, we get to talking, blah, blah, but I couldn't do this. Too many white people. So I think that there's like, so I'm like, but if you come, there'll be one more, you know what I mean? But, it's just like, I think that we have some tools and some people in place that are changing that are changing the way that Maine exists as far with Black people. We even have Travel Black Maine. I think that's the name of it.
Black Travel Maine.
Black Travel Maine.
Yeah, heck yes.
Yeah, and it's just a beautiful thing to see like these group of people just enjoying the state. Because I can tell you, the state is beautiful. I mean, it's gorgeous. No joke. It's gorgeous.
Yeah. I appreciate the time, Sean, giving me your real reflections, teaching us all about your life and how you got to where you are, how you create the way you do. Shout out Sean. Check out the show notes so you can learn more about Sean's work, what he's doing, as well as about Genius Black. Myself, for this episode, we're done. You have been listening to Maine's Black Future.
But now, okay, this is, my father passed away last year, and this was his toast that he would always say. He would say it whenever we raised a glass, or he would say it just to let me know who I was. I was born into this world all black and bare. I roamed the world without a care. And when I die, I don't know where, but I'm a thoroughbred here and I'll be a thoroughbred there.
All right.
Decided to do that for Pops. This is for Dad. This is for Alonzo Sr.
Shout out Alonzo. Right on.
Yep.